animals which have been on the verge of extinction, and also they are almost being extinct nowadays. One of the research which I was reading was of rhinoceros, sorry, which is on the verge of extinction today. And the reason being that in that area there is encroachment of or encroachment of the people around, and also of the fact that the vegetation, means the kind of atmosphere it requires, it is unable to get. At the same time, there is poaching happening because of its skin, and also encroachment of the surrounding means urbanization, I would say, which is affecting the whole a lot of rhinoceros community. Yeah, so that is one of the indicator. And also animals, as I've mentioned over here, that again I would say that zooplanktons like Alona, Cutata, and Moss cyclopesidex are zone dependent pollution indicators. They are totally dependent upon how if there is change in some water uh, quality, it will totally make us totally be visible, because it will start dying, or it will start uh, creating some issues in the water, which will make us understand that there is a pollution. Okay. The damage to, as it is written, the damage to ecosystem caused due to pollution is indicated by presence, as I said, by presence or absence, or due to accumulation of toxins in the tissues of animals. Okay, so that could also be one of the reasons. uh, yeah, again, frogs are also bioindicators of quality. Frogs are basically, they're influenced by changes that take place in our freshwater and terrestrial habitats. So this makes them important bioindicator of ecological quality and changes. And there was a report before that frogs have also started becoming extinct, and the reason could be lot of, but the reason is that only that there are a lot of changes happening in their tissues which they cannot bear, and that is how the whole lot of community of, whether be it frogs or any other animal which or bird which you find it right now, is being extinct because of so much of pollution, because of air pollution happening. uh, there are reasons that animals are bioindicators of environmental pollution. Switching on to microbial indicators. Microbial indicators are, they can be indicated by the presence in aquatic or terrestrial ecosystem. Microbes are present everywhere, they're also on our hands and everywhere, but you have to when it comes to environment, you have to be uh, in a way, you have to see it that which indicator or which microbe is going to make us understand that there is some issue. So and also because of its abundance, they are easily and because of the fact that they are easily available and readily present for and easy to test also, microbes are considered as best indicators. The health can be easily understandable by it. As I said, that in water also there is E. coli and fecal coliform tests, which helps us to understand that is the water polluted or not, and also to what extent it has been polluted. If you are aware of the bioluminescent bacteria, uh, they are being used to test water for environmental pollution also. Okay, so again, I have some researchers in a way that have rapid growth rate. One such example which I would give is of Vogesella indigofera, which reacts heavy metals, which reacts to heavy metals quantitatively, and that is one of the bacteria which helps us to find out heavy metals in its tissues. Uh, Alternatively, the vicinity of hexavalent chromium, the production of pigment is blocked. Okay, so there are the pigmentation which I said was of when blue pigmentation starts happening on it, and when there is increase of uh, hexavalent chromium, that is how it becomes a, a very major indicator which helps us in detecting that there is some significant a chemical which is affecting it, which is Vogezella indigofera. Okay, so there are a lot of indicators around which helps us to find out what are the issues and how it can be dealt with also. Okay, now I hope there is a clear understanding of what is how animals, how birds, how microbes helps us in detecting the pollution in the environment. So I would go to a case study which says that that how Mohs how Mohs is an indicator of air pollution. Okay, so here it was in northwestern Alaska where there was this group of scientists who studied Mohs patterns. If there are red dog mines in Alaska, which are the biggest mines of mining site. Now, what was happening there was that that these indicators, that Mohs, that is also known as Halcomium splendens. They were being accumulated since Mohs is like they're present around in that area. So what was happening was that when there was transportation of mines, there were these deposition of pollutants on it, and that was bringing about a change in the environment of that area because of the mining activities. There was change, and also because of there due to transportation of mines, there were changes around in the encompassing environment. So the objective of the study was to determine the spatial patterns and distribution of heavy metals on the surrounding environment, and that is encompassing biota, and to identify potential sources of these airborne heavy metals, and also to identify what are the potential sources. Like, is it because of the mines? Because we cannot always question a whole set of industry going, but we also have to find out what is the reason, find out a lot of other factors also. So that is how to identify potential sources of these airborne heavy metals in that ways. So that is how study was designed in this particular manner, that unwashed and Mohs was analyzed on the sides of the area, and the soil was also collected, and then it was studied why how much deposition was present on the Moses, and how it was adversely affecting the encompassing biota of the around area. Apart from that, red dog, like apart from that, when a truck is passing by some area, you will find that the mines are being accumulated. The cadmium and the lead, which were the two chemicals which were present on the Moses, which were affecting the Mohs and also the environment around the area. And on finding out that they were present, the conclusion came upon was that it was affecting the around environment, and also it reduced when it went away. Like, as the distance increased, like distance from the mine site increased, the cadmium and lead deposition on adjacent hole also decreased. Okay, but what we got to know from this study was that it is important to study the around vegetation of such big mines, mine area, because you will be able to understand that how these mines are affecting, how these extraction activities are affecting the major environment around the area, and what could be the major effects. Now, cadmium and lead, not only Mohs, it was depositing on the Mohs, but also on the surrounding surfaces like on the soil. At the end, it would get into the soil, get absorbed in the ground, and create a big havoc not only for the vegetation but also for human community. So that is how MOS was utilized, and it was an indicator of air pollution, because air pollution, because of the fact that, when surrounding mine pollutants would also, fly, it would get deposited on each one of them. So that is how we get to know that how overland transport and mining extraction activities help creates pollution in this particular manner. And that is how we find out that which chemical or which parameter is in increased form in an area. When we find out a lot of studies of on groundwater, or on the fact that, where I stay, around that area, means on the outskirts of that area, there is a lot of accumulation of iron, and iron, yeah. So that is why, how did we find out that? Because there were researchers which kept on going there, finding out that uh, why iron is more and how it is adversely affecting not only the vegetation but also humans. Okay, so this was one of the case studies of Red Dog Mine area in Alaska. Okay, so now going ahead with plankton as an indicator of water pollution. Here, I have, on reading a lot of other researches, I found out that planktons as an indicator of water pollution serves as a best indicator of water pollution, because it is right in front of our eyes. It can be seen very right in front of us. So in that way, and also when you talk about lakes, uh, when we talk about lakes or river, what we see first is that there is some dirt. हम ऐसा सोचते हैं कि oh god, this place is becoming dirty, but or stagnant water is becoming dirty, but there is a reason behind it, that why it is becoming dirty. So that is how sorry planktons as an indicator of water pollution, which I found it as a very good indicator of water pollution around the areas. These are microscopic plants, and they just drift aimlessly with the tides and currents. Planktons are and they cycle large amounts of energy that they pass on to higher trophic levels. Okay, so as I told that there are planktons, there are benthos, and there are macros, and how it goes from one level to another, and how one or the difference will make a whole lot of food chain disruptive also. uh, and planktons react rapidly to ecological changes, and they are viewed as excellent indicators. And also, as I said, that how do you want to categorize it, how do you want to classify it? So it will act as an early warning signals, because we can see it in the first of all, we can see it with our bare eyes. And also we can also find out what is the issue with it. Taking an example of a lake, uh, if we all know about eutrophication that happens. Now eutrophication happens because of many reasons, but when in a lake, when there is wastewater deposition or any other reason because of which the water quality is not being taken care of, at that time in the lake, there is presence of planktons already. There is it is not a new creature which is going to be present, but they are already present. When the eutrophication occurs, what happens is that the nitrogen and phosphorus in the water increases. Okay, the concentration of, and what happens is that the reproduction of planktons starts happening. Okay, so planktons starts reproducing in a way that they start stopping the sunlight and also the other nutrients and air to go inside the plant, inside the water. Okay, this becomes evident. Then what happens is that there is poor water quality because of unavailability of the requirements of water to be rich in its component. There is poor water quality, and which indirectly or directly affects the living organisms. Okay, So that is that, why there is a cycle of plankton shown, because that is how we will get to understand that what is water pollution, and how we are able to understand that uh, water is a major source of a lot of things, and how it can be polluted. This is one of the example which I am giving. There are many other examples which will be present, but a lake is one of an easy example to make everybody understand and easily accessible. So this makes it easier for everybody to understand for the role of planktons. Okay, so now there are certain planktons such as it is cyanobacteria, which produces toxins which are harmful for fish growth. So planktons could be positive and negative both, I would say, because they are high, because when on reproduction uh, they can be those sources which actually starts disrupting the water, but also they provide us the indication of the fact that water is being polluted, we need to treat it. So it's both positive and negative. Okay, and yeah, thus planktons, as I said, can be termed as useful or harmful with respect to what wastewater fed production of fishes also. Okay, so apart, this is one of it, wastewater fed production of fishes, or with other lot of other factors. Okay, I hope I am being a bit clear about things. Okay, now types of planktons. Planktons have phytoplanktons and zooplanktons, and here there is, there are names of phytoplanktons and what are the indications that they bring upon. As I said, that cyanobacteria are those bacteria that produce that helps us in indicating pollution and which restricts the fish growth. So in the similar way, there are planktons which have different indications, and which tells us about different indications of environmental pollution, or pollution, I would say, or also of the positive sides of water. Okay, so as it is seen that there is green algae which facilitates the growth of fishes. There are mosses and liverts, pollution by accumulation of metals, charophytes. I haven't shown you with the pictures you because they are available also everywhere, and once people of if there are people present of zoology or botany, they will be able to understand it very well, uh, about phytoplanktons and all the present planktons over here. Okay, so these are some of the evidences of phytoplanktons, and also they are it has a similar relationship of growing with there is a growth rate of an algal population, photosynthesis and nutrient content concentrations in the water body. Okay, it is directly related to all of these. Okay, now as you can see, Euglena gracilis is organic pollution in lakes, indicates organic pollution in lakes. Because organic pollution in the lakes, that means it could be also a possibility that the COD of the water is very high. Helps in chlorella Chlorella vulgaris helps in removal of heavy metals contamination from water and soil. Now, all this is possible also by microbial studies into it, and by analysis of water, and which type of microbe will be helpful uh, in, in its indication, like which type of phytoplankton. Okay, and chlorococcales like C. vulgaris and A. Falcatus. It was from a research of two scientists, Param Shivam and Srinivas, in 19, which was carried out in 1981. Why it is written? Because that is how we'll be able to understand that how from long back these are the indications and planktons which are being able to make us understand that there is some indication of pollution. And during that time also they were the indicators of water, paper industry and sewage industry. indicate. Okay, so that could be an indicator of paper and sewage industry because of the wastewater, and because how they must have been studied by the wastewater treatments and by analyzing the wastewater at that time. Okay, zooplanktons. Now, in zooplanktons, there are a lot of microscopic animals now, which gives us an indication of how these are very microscopic. These are also studies which we have to go in depth in to understand that how these are helpful. Uh, okay, so zooplanktons are microscopic animals living near to the surface of the water body. Uh, they don't swim very easily, and they instead rely on tides, and they flow with in that direction. Okay, and the currents, as they are transported, they'll flow in that way, and they feed upon phytoplanktons, bacterioplanktons, or detritus, that is marine snow. Okay, so zooplanktons are an important role, play an important role because of the fact that uh, they indicate the level of water pollution as it is as it is they are present in the water. Okay, so here are some of the zooplanktons which I have explained, and which I found out that what are the reasons of indication of it. You know, high turbidity due to suspended sediments. That is the zooplankton Hexarthamira or Keratella tropica. These are the zooplanktons which will help you understanding understanding what type of problem is being faced in the water. Okay, oysters and crabs. Their presence of lead. Uh, Now, lead when present in water also affects the any of the nutrient extra, or any of the chemical present extra to from a certain limit present extra in the water will definitely affect the whole ecosystem, whole water body, all the microorganisms of the water body. So here are some of the examples of zooplanktons with its indications. Okay, now let's go ahead with biomonitoring. Biomonitoring, like as bioindicators, we get to know about quantitative information. So by biomonitoring, we get to know about the quantitative in. The quantitative information on the quality of the environment can be found out by biomonitoring, because biomonitoring helps us in finding out that how much and how many uh, uh, the microbes or plants are present, and that is how biomonitoring uh, is also one of the fields of bioindication, as it is written that these organisms and are basically used to define the characteristics. Bioorganisms are basically used to define the characteristics of biosphere, and as well uh, and they vary. See, bioindicators and biomonitors, they also vary considerably, in a way that biomonitors tells us the quantitative gives us a quantitative information, while bioindicators gives us qualitative information about the whole system. Okay, and then monitoring can be done with the objective of observing the temporal and spatial changes in the health status. Okay, and it can be found out like the spatial changes, apart, for spatial changes, we need to get into very costly indication and analysis. Reason being that you require softwares, you require certain kind of other uh, equipments for it. But when you get into bioindicating or biomonitors, it will be easily available, and also it can be easily understood, as in because of the presence of biomonitors inside our own ecosystem. So, and it is easy for reclamation, remediation, and reintroduction of all of the monitoring also. So for me, when I was finding out and studying over it, what was found out was honeybees, which are the best biomonitors. And biomonitoring is a very useful tool in finding out a lot of information about what, in how much depth and how much quantity. Quantity in terms of the area or the presence of that indicator, uh, a presence of that indicator in that region or in the surrounding regions. Yeah, so honeybees is one of the best biomonitor, and we will study, like we will go ahead and get to know more about honeybees now. Yeah, honeybees and honey and hives products as bioindicators and biomonitors of environmental pollution. Now, honeybee has proven to be a good biological indicator that is easy for environmental biomonitoring at any scale. Now, if you see honeybees are those insects which sits on soil, which sits on nectar, which sits on pollens, which sits on every smallest or the biggest of the surrounding area of its own environment, and that is how it becomes the best indicator of environmental pollution. Okay, and considering the whole world, and so we can find out that in Mediterranean countries like Spain, Egypt, and all, we find out that there are a lot of biomonitors. There are a lot of wild honeybees, which gives a better understanding of the pollution of that area. Okay, biomonitoring utilizes organisms that are sensitive, ubiquitous, and stable in the territory of interest to obtain accurate information on pollutant present in the territory as well as their biotoxic effects. Okay, honeybees have shown to satisfy all these requirements because they are very sensitive to pesticides. Honeybees can be very sensitive to them. They are in numbers. They are present in numbers. So we can find out a lot of understanding of the entire environment about of that area, and also they are stable to an extent that wherever there is a honey, like there is this hive, you will find out that they are stable there and they are there for a lot of time. Okay, so that is how it has become a good biological indicator for environmental monitoring at any scale. Okay, so that is how we will go ahead and understand a little bit more about honeybees. So honeybees, one of the things which I found out was that honeybees were collected when they were dead, and then they were tested upon. Over here, we don't mean to take up any of the indicators which will be alive and which will be tested on alive, because that would be also cruelty towards animals or any organism. So we dead honeybees are taken up and they are being assessed. uh, the reason, as I said, that they visit almost every environmental sector, and they, with us, a radius of approximately 12 kilometer square kilometer around the hive. So they provide, they are collected, they are randomly means they are the ones that randomly they sample around, means the area, and gives us random sampling, which is a very good way of of getting the uh, whole idea of that surroundings. Okay, so bees act as bioaccumulators. Now, bioaccumulators uh, are also one of it, that they accumulate the changes inside their bodies, and they tend to show difference in through their metabolism. Okay, once in as it is said, they are easy to sample, and they are great for analyzing contaminants at various levels. Okay, yeah, so that is how if it is inside their bodies or in their surroundings, they are easily in the first place, they are easily available. And also the levels of residues or pollutants in their bodies can be assessed easily, okay, by honeybees. And they can capture pollutants uh, on a lot of surfaces, from a lot of surfaces, okay. So that is how functioning of honeybees as bioaccumulators helps us to understand that area, that surrounding areas accumulation of any content, whether be it heavy metals, whether be it pesticides, whether be it any other content, you will be able to find out through honeybees. And the major factor being that honeybees are they also have a particular time of life, so it becomes easier for us to understand and find out honeybees and test on it. Not only means I have mentioned over about Mediterranean countries, but I would also have that it is also the same honeybees, and not the same honeybees. Honeybees, even in India, even in any part of the world, will be helpful in finding out its own uh, you know uh, pollutants uh, present in the area, and will be a good bio indicator in a way that it can be termed as also a bioaccumulator. There is a research of bioaccumulation, okay, just like phytoremediation. Yeah. So determination of heavy, so as I said that they can be easily available, accessible, and in the similar way they are, they are great capturer, they are great uh, indicators that just grab a lot of things inside their bodies, and they become a great indicator of pollutants, okay. So here I have given an example. Here there is the fact that there are nuclear power plants, and I have mentioned about radionuclides because honeybees, when they are present around that area, they will be going around in every direction. And also from like talking about the radionuclides or the radioactive particles, you know talking about this very issue is because it is a very sensitive issue. And also there was a, a, a industry in which because of the constant dispersion of these kind of radioactive particle, uh, that that led to a lot of issues around the area. It also not only disrupted the vegetation around the area, but also harmed the health of the humans, okay. So radionuclides can just disperse around by the chimneys of the power plants, and also by it could be not only by dispersion or disposal of uh, by chimneys, but also it could be because of accidents or leakages, unwanted disposals. So radionuclides uh, are dispersed in that particular manner, and it will be gradually what will happen is that it will gradually deposit on soil, vegetables, water, and become a major concern. So how can we find out? So then the honeybees becomes a major source of finding out that what how and what will be the issues which will be present, and how it will affect the surrounding environment, okay. So when studying bees, it is possible to analyze the metal deposited on the body separated from those ingested, okay, together with nectar, water, or other liquids by the by the bees, okay. So heavy metals are also accumulated in it, and as I said that bees are very sensitive to pesticides. They will be able to make us understand that uh, pesticides, when they are on certain, when they are like put on plants, uh, they become a source of also getting absorbed in water, and because of being absorbed in water or in the soil, creates a very harmful effect on the surrounding in like when the water is leached, or the soil or the groundwater, when the soil is leached, right, or the water is leached, it goes into the water, the major reservoir, and that affects the whole the whole ecosystem in its way. So if it can be from the source only, if we find out that what is the issue and how we can find a solution, it will be a great step towards also saving the environment, and also not harming the humans in a lot of other manner. Yeah. So honeybees are a great indicator of bioindicators of contaminants, be it heavy metals, be it pesticides, whether it is radionuclides from nuclear power plants, or whether it is just normal NOx or SOx. You can always find out that also. So here we can always whatever data which we analyze, we will be able to find out that how much concentration does one bee have, how much like pollutants present in one bee can definitely give us a overall idea about the concentration of that pollutant in the whole area. Yeah. uh, so they are they are just present everywhere, which helps us to indicate the pollution or the pollutants present in that area very easily. Yeah. uh, just a minute. Just a minute. Yeah. So in that way, whether it is wild or domestically raised honeybees, they will all give us great examples, and they will serve as great bioindicators for water pollution, for soil or air pollution, and also I would say yeah, for air and soil pollution, land pollution. Okay, so overall, uh, bioindicators are not only uh, it can be a collective effort of everybody in terms of understanding that uh, not only the environmentalist, I would say, that will be bringing about a change, but when a collective transformation environment environment will happen only with multidisciplinary approach, not only by like students of environmental science, or not only from one of the fields who are studying ecology or biodiversity, but also from a lot of different perspectives in terms of what you have studied, what perspective you have towards environment, and what you want to and how change, what kind of a change you want in the environment. So it's a multidisciplinary approach, and indicating this is just a way out of not only finding out uh, like indication of environmental pollution by the bigger researchers, but also from the surroundings, and also by our own own individual levels. Okay. So I have a very close kind of interest towards bioindicators, because they are very easily available, they are very objective, straightforward, and also they are present everywhere. So at various scale at yeah, at various scales. So in that way it becomes a very very useful tool in indicating pollution, and of different, not only a certain kind of pollution, but various kinds, and lot of kind of pollutions. Yeah. And also unless a lot of people participate in it, and there is a whole lot of change to tackle the environmental issues, and not only talk about them, but also do a little work behind it, will make a whole lot of difference. Yeah. And also doing little changes, like if we can just stop using uh, plastics a little less. Plastics, not only they are also a bioindicator of the fact that we are using up plastics in a way that they are harming our harming a lot of our organisms, uh, be it cows eating it up, or be it fishes being trapped in it. Okay, so all those factors definitely affect us, and we as humans only are the ones who are going to bear the sad fruit or the uh, good fruit of what we are doing today. Okay, so I hope that bioindicators will help uh, to understand a lot of environmental issues, and will be be a way out for finding out environmental pollutions in our surroundings and also on a greater level. Yeah. So these were the references, and also the fact that my paper was published on bioindicators, a natural indicator of environmental pollution, while I was in my master's, and that is how I have a close term with bioindicators. And there are a lot of other, you know, uh, in-depth knowledge which you can get from learning bioindicators. Once you start going into it, you will find it that there are a lot of in-depth factors which will be helpful for us to understand that how environment is not only just uh, about uh, water, air, and the surroundings, but also a lot of other things around us, and industries. Industries polluting it, but there are a lot of other factors which makes the whole environment. Yeah, I'm very thankful to everyone for being so patient and listening. Thank you. I hope I have made myself clear. If there is any questions.
Indeed, and you should end insightful presentation. Would you like to take a glass of water?
Yeah. I just wanted to.
Yep. We now open the floor of the house for questions. Participants can put in their questions in the chat box or unmute them and ask the same.
Yes. Good evening, ma'am. I'm Shibashish. I'm currently the student member of Haritkram. It was indeed a highly insightful and lucid presentation, ma'am. So my question to you, ma'am, with regard to bioindicators is that India over the years has committed itself to sustainable forest management, the SFM. So what role do you think bioindicators have, or the potential of bioindicators in ensuring sustainable management of forests in our country? This was my question. Ma'am, could you kindly unmute yourselves?
Yes. So, forest, I hope I'm able to understand your question well, that you are asking about that forest, how forest can be useful as, and what are the organisms present.
No, ma'am. I was going through some articles and they suggested that bioindicators have somewhat potential in ensuring sustainable management of forests. So that was my question. Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. So I would say, are you able to see me, because some of my screen?
Yes, ma'am. We are able to see you, ma'am.
Okay. So the fact is that forest can become a major, a way of finding out that how it will be useful, because see, forest in itself have lot of lot of potentials. Hello.
Yes, ma'am. We are able to hear you.
Yeah. So forest in itself have a lot of bioindicators present in them, which will help it grow like in a different in a way of managerial sector. Means if you if you go into the forest, as I discussed about lichens and moses, when you take the samples of lichens and moses from the forest, you will be able to understand and test them. You will be able to understand that there is either there is a positive change or there is a negative change. Means if there will be a pollutant in it, and there is a regressive growth of lichens or moses, then it will be an indicator of the fact that you need to work on it, and also which pollutant is present in that forest, and how you will be able to change or work on that parameter so that it can be curbed, and the forest management can definitely do it. And also there are a lot of other factors. For example, uh, forest, like as I said, that there are animals or plants, so those are also indicators that will be helpful to figure out that will it be able to sustain any kind of pollution, like as I said, that in plants, there are little plants also with leaves on it. If you see, there are certain kind of diseases, like there are some small circles kind of disease on the plants. So all those factors can definitely let us know that how much even the life of the forest, or the life of that plant can be found out by it. So in that way, there has to be a certain type of study. You will have to also study the surrounding atmosphere, surrounding environment, that is it being does it have an industry surrounding it, or what kind of planning settlement is around that area, which will make the whole lot of difference. And then you will be able to understand or decide upon a bioindicator which you want to work on it. So you will have to find out all those factors first, and then definitely bioindicators will be that factors which will help in managing the forest and bringing about a change. Yeah.
Thank you very much, ma'am.
Was I able to give you an answer well, or?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Hello, ma'am.
Hi.
A question from Prasanna. How does bioaccumulation work? If you could give us an example and how it affects the nutrient cycles.
Yeah. So bioaccumulation actually works in a way that there is accumulation of pollutants, or some other not only pollutants, I would say, but any chemicals, or any other surrounding factor which gets accumulated in a body of that surrounding species which is present, and that becomes a bioaccumulation. You will not be able to understand until you test on it. So it is a whole chain of bioaccumulation which brings about a change. And also when an organism, or when a species, when they start developing this fact that they will start absorbing a lot of pollutants or a lot of chemicals at a faster rate, means that is how I in between I gave an example of rhinoceros. Or rhinoceros could be a different fact, but also the fact that there are a lot of species which are being extinct nowadays, and also you see a lot of rare species of plants which are getting extinct nowadays. The reason being that nowadays, just one example of sparrows, we don't see sparrows around. That could also be a possible reason of bioaccumulation, because sparrows are very sensitive to our surroundings due to constant industrialization or constant pollution around us. We see that there is accumulation of accumulations on their tissues, and that brings about a change in their own body, and that is how their reproduction also stops, and that is how the whole community gets extinct, and that is how bioaccumulation works. Yeah. And
thank you so much, ma'am.
Thank you for explaining that. That was very clear. And hello, can you hear me?
Hi. Yes,
yeah,
yes,
I'm Prasanna. I asked about bioaccumulation, and
yes,
that's
yes.
very
Hello.
makes a lot of sense. In fact, I was trying to think of how it connects to bioindicators and bioaccumulation, and that's a very interesting connect for us to know. And I was wondering, would you? Is it something that has become a part of the Indian environmental policy, whether they're looking at bioindicators, or is it still very much limited to universities?
Yeah. So, I have been, since I have got this chance, opportunity to be a part of Haritgram Green Chats, and also, since I have this paper, so I keep on doing a lot of research. So, till now, I haven't found any policy level, change in terms of, any policy coming out saying that you must take up bioindicators as a term and start using it. But, on lot of not industries, universities and all, they have started adapting and using the term bioindicators. So in that way, and I would also say that bioindicators, they are each and every other factor which affects environment. So we can term it in it, we can always come up with our own research papers and bring about a change, in that way. So for India level, I haven't found any of the laws
Yes,
being
I
passed
think
in
it's
that.
very low on awareness.
Yes, yes, yes.
So, which is why I was very interested in your talk and I was wanting
Yeah.
to hear it. And what you said makes a lot of sense too. I think all the students also, they must have really enjoyed it. So,
I hope so.
thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you so much,
Hello,
ma'am.
hello, Ms. Trishala. Am I audible?
Yes, yes.
Yeah, so a really insightful talk. And it was quite elaborative. So yeah, I really liked it. So my question to you is, what is your opinion about bumblebees declining? I mean, do you think it's an indicator of climate change? I mean, I'm touching upon your discussion on the bees. So what is your take on the bumblebees declining and its link with climate change?
There could be a lot of reasons behind it. As I said that sparrows, till now we haven't I haven't found any of the particular uh, uh, reason why sparrows have decreased. So in that particular manner, bees, like you're talking about bumblebees, right? So it could be a reason that they cannot sustain certain kind of since I have to find out that what kind of I will have to find out like what kind of environment do bumblebees sustain in. So it could be a reason that there is growing change in the climate. You see, first our monsoons used to be early, means on time, and our summer season used to complete on time. But now the things have changed. Today also, we have lot of variations in climate. So there, it could be a reason that bumblebees could be you know uh, could have been managed because of change in climate. But the fact being that also uh, not only climate, I would say that urbanization and industrialization, like in which area there are certain, it could happen that in certain areas you will not find certain creatures, but in certain areas they will be present. So you'll also have to find out that how and which area is being affected in that way. Yeah.
Okay, okay. Thank you so much. Also, a follow-up question, if you don't mind.
Yes, yes.
Yeah. So, when we're talking about India, right? In India, environmental understanding and policy making is based a lot upon qualitative aspects that we take into consideration, and also quantitative aspects. So, bioindicators is primarily a qualitative aspect, right? I mean, it cannot be really quantified, right? So, what do you think is the future of indicators in terms of putting it into data? Like, how do we see it transforming into data? Because you see, data is really important for policy intervention.
Yeah.
So yeah.
This is a very nice question. Bioindicators, in that way, for bioindicators, there are certain kind of when we say bioindicators, they are quantitative and quantitative, and they will not give you actually bioindicators are qualitative, and bio monitors are quantitative. Okay, so if you're getting a qualitative information, so why wouldn't somebody not want to add up in their own policy making? And once in India, I would say, once when we start doing correct kind of researches, I'm sure it will bring up a change. But the fact that lot the understanding of the factor that bioindicators giving us a qualitative change or giving us a whole lot of information about certain region will help in solving a lot of issues of environment today. Like you see Yamuna River. Now in Yamuna River is being polluted so much, and now the government have started to realize after so much of pollution in it that there is, like in the last years only I got like in the newspaper there was so much of that farming happening, and that was probably because of the waste waters forming, and people were still going inside it and doing puja. So at this point people and researchers of that area need to figure out that what is affecting, whether it is wastewater treatment required, or whether it is something else, whether it's any other chemical which is bringing about a change, and which is a kind of at that time biomonitors will be helpful, but bioindication will be a major factor. So it's always also a magic of language, I would say, that how you want to express and what kind of term you want to use. And researches are always researches, so in that way you will have to explain in a very different kind of form. Yeah.
Absolutely, totally agree. Thank you so much.
Yeah, but not only magic of language, you'll also have to have a good research, like be it on your water analysis, or be it on your indication of that, as I termed of bees, or whether it is around which area you are doing, whether it is soil, air, everything. You'll have to have good knowledge, not knowledge, but at least analysis, and results should be very clear to make anyone understand. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much, Ms. Trishala.
Okay, thank you.
Hello everyone, my name is Pratyus, and I would just like to ask a question to Ms. Trishala. We do know about parasites, so can parasite be used as the bioindicator of water quality or something? If you like to
parasites. Yeah, parasites can be used, but you will have to parasites are actually co-host with their with the surrounding or with the other microorganism. So in that way parasites could also be a bioindicator, but you will also have to find out that what kind of parasite you want to use. Just as there is this lot of like planktons, then zooplanktons, then phytoplanktons. In that particular manner there were so much of subtypes. So in that way, which type of parasite whether it is clinged to a tree, or whether it is clinged to what kind of what is its host, you will have to first figure out that, and then you will have to find out that and then you will have to analyze that what kind of pollution or what kind of indication it is giving. Yeah. So yes, it can become an indicator of pollution, or an indicator of the fact that the tree on which it is surviving, or maybe the host, whichever host it is surviving, is it right or wrong in that way. Yeah, means it is being polluted or not in that way.
Yeah, that answers my question. Again, just one more question. You talked about planktons and all. So they are actually the planktons, right?
Planktons.
Yeah. So they are actually the bioindicators for water quality. But if we talk about the bioindicators for maybe biodiversity or something, do you like to highlight anything? Yeah, touch upon anything on that?
It's apart from water.
Yeah, apart from water.
So planktons apart from water?
No. I was saying that you mentioned about planktons, that they are the bioindicators for water quality. But if we talk about bioindicators for maybe biodiversity, like biodiversity of any region. So
so in that way you'll have to, again I would say that for example some of the areas biodiversity studies are like, for example, if you go to deciduous forest and there you study trees, like their own trees, so you will able to understand that, you know, biodiversity of that area is because of the trees present in it. Or if you go to rainforest, so there are trees, there are different types of trees there. So you'll have to figure out that you know, so biodiversity includes a lot of terms. Means it's not only you know, trees and all, but also the plants, animals, vegetation cover, its climate, everything turns into a biodiversity term. So in that way, again, it depends upon your you know, what in that area you want to select as your indicator, and figure out how which factor will be, you know, very suitable for the change in the biodiversity, or biodiversity as a whole, a term, as in biodiversity indicators. I would, if I give an example, it would be plants, for example. So if there is some plant which is again getting diseased or which is dying, so if you find out that plant, and you know, if you try to change the whole you know, uh, like there is an accumulation of I would say nickel or cobalt on that. So what you will have to figure out is that from where is that coming, and then how you will be able to change, and how you will be able to, you know, first of all bring stop that nickel cobalt excess to it, and then help grow that plant again in that way. So yeah, biodiversity indicators will be very different, will be different in different regions, and which biodiversity indicator you want to select totally depends upon your choice of selection. Yeah.
Yeah, that answers my question, and thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, ma'am.
Yeah.
Now I would like to request Harshita ma'am to kindly address us all.
Thank you, Astha. Trishula, it was indeed, I really thoroughly enjoyed your presentation, and it was indeed it was highly informative, and you supported every aspects of your topic with several examples and and it was very insightful to hear about bioindicators and about the innovative approach, how it assesses various types of environmental mismanagement, basically. So it includes, like you told, that it includes all the biological processes, species or communities, anything that we come across, and how it is used to assess the quality of environment, and also how the environment is changing over time because of the several human impacts, as I would say. So it effectively basically indicates the condition of the environment because of their moderate tolerance to environmental variability, in short. So it was highly innovative. And moreover, I also enjoyed the case studies and the examples that you gave. For example, you talked about phytoplanktons, you talked about mosses and lichens. Like as an environmental science student, I have also been very fascinated about these indicators or bio indicators. Like when we talk about mosses and lichens in the plants, or how they are basically, how the SO2, sulfur dioxide pollution, is the major reason, because of we can directly indicate the presence or absence of mosses and lichens, and we can directly connect it that it is directly linking to the air pollution that is happening. So when we say that it is SO2, because of the SO2, these lichens and mosses are actually directly affected. So we can directly make out that yes, this area is severely affected by vehicular pollution mostly. And similarly, like if you find in water bodies, we find E. coli present, like you also mentioned this example as well. And we all know that E. coli is present in the digestive systems of all the living organisms, in majority of the living organisms. So it directly indicates that that means all the sewage of fecal matter is being dumped into that water body. That is why E. coli is present in the water as well. So obviously that water is not potable or not drinkable. So it was very, very informative, and I'm sure that the students have also enjoyed it. And moreover, you also talked about bio monitoring, which is again in addition to the bio indicator thing. Like bio indicator, as you mentioned, it is a very qualitative approach. And when you basically assess and you do proper analysis of it, it is bio monitoring, in which Then you also gave example about honeybees and how basically they are affected with the pesticides and heavy metals, and most interestingly to hear that it was also being able to assess the radionuclides in the honeybees, which directly indicates again nuclear pollution that our world is facing. So it was very, very innovative, and the way you basically supported all the answers with examples and case studies was, again, it was very easy for us to understand as well. So I would just like to thank, and moreover, you have also done research on that. So it is very interesting to hear your perspective. And it was indeed a very, very interesting talk. Thank you so much, Trishula.
Thank you so much for inviting me over and giving me a space to talk. It was a really it was a really nice experience for me also. And I would like to thank the whole team of Haritkram for constantly, being so active. And I have seen all your other, like, I haven't been a part, but I have seen how innovative topics are there, which the green chats have gone through, and it's really beautiful. And thank you so much. And I'm so happy to be a part of this family. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Now I would like to request Sibashi, student member of Haritkram, to deliver the vote of thanks.
Thank you very much, Asta. So good evening, everyone. I'm Shibashish, student member of Haritkram, and it is with great honor that I propose a vote of thanks for week 31 of Kukato Green Chats. First of all, I would like to express our sincere gratitude towards our speaker for today, Ms. Trishala Parma, for enlightening us with her insightful, invigorating, and indeed a lucid presentation. It gave us deep insights into the theme, the natural indicator of environmental pollution, that is the bioindicator. And in the course of this, we got to know about some of the most intriguing facts, and her well-illustrated case studies also gave us a deep insight into the entire subject matter. Thank you so much, ma'am, for sparing your valuable time with us and being here with us today. I would also like to thank our pillars of strength, our teachers, Raman sir, Mita ma'am, Jyoti ma'am, Shikha ma'am, and Komal ma'am, for being a constant source of guidance and inspiration for all of our endeavors here at Haritkram. Thank you to the audience for their patient listening. Last but not the least, thank you to all my fellow mates at Haritkram. Wishing everyone a very good evening. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sibashish. With this, we come to the end of today's session. To end with a thought, our stories may be singular, but our destiny is shared. Let us all come together and work for a reason greater than any of us. Wishing everyone a very good evening. Thank you.